there was another moment that I want to talk about that happened before my last official Sunday at this church. Um, Another moment that at the time it felt very spiritual. It felt sacred, like God Himself had stepped into the room. God had met me at a divine time, right? But years later, I realized something else was happening, something far more calculated. This service was my pastor's at the time birthday service. I think it might have been his 40th birthday service at the time. I'm not sure. And so what makes this service pretty unique is that I had been fasting for, might have been 12 days at this time. I had just come off a 12-day fast, 12 days of prayer, 12 days of denying my body food and water. I didn't do any of those things. 12 days of just asking God for clarity, reading my Bible, just really getting close to God. No social anything at the time. Social media wasn't what it is now. And when you fast like that in Pentecostal culture, you expect something to happen. Like you are fasting not because this is some type of ritual that collective ritual that everybody's doing, but you are doing this in a season in your life where you need answers direct from God. You need revelation. You expect revelation. You expect God to speak. And when I came out of the fast, I did feel something. There's no denying that I felt something. I lost all this weight. I was cachectic, just very malnourished, and the something that I felt, it wasn't excitement. It wasn't urgency, but it was clarity. It was a strange kind of clarity because it felt out of line with what I expected and what the church was doing at the time. I thought I was going to get back in line with the church and just be connected and just feel reconnected. All the things that I've talked about previously, I wouldn't feel anymore. The hurt, the pain, the guilt, all of the chaos that was just surrounding me at the time, I felt like it would just be shedded from this fast. And so that clarity surprised me because the clarity wasn't telling me to rise up into leadership and be magnificent in God and walk in my place and stand next to the man of God and do all of these different things that I felt like I was struggling to do at the time. The clarity told me to pull back. The clarity told me to slow down. It told me that the God that I was serving and knew at the time was not God. And we'll get deeper into this. The clarity that I was getting at that time was I didn't know it, but it was a revelation of who God was and who God was becoming in my life at the time. I had deviated from, and I think we all did it in that church at the time, from who God was, God's original plan, and we created an image or a likeness of God that we were serving, right? And so told me to slow down, to create a space between myself and the man who had become the center of my spiritual life. There was no inkling in my body that I needed to become closer to this man at this point after this fast. I didn't understand why fully at the time, but something in me has shifted permanently. I was not going back at this time, even if I wanted to. And for the first time in a long time, I listened to that inner voice. And so again, this was a birthday service, my pastor's birthday service. And in birthday services in the Black church or in this church, they were very big events. They were an opportunity for the community, the church community, to come together as a collective, and the church would be full. Church would be full. There would be guest preachers, visiting pastors and their flocks. The visiting preachers would come. You would have prophets, evangelists, bishops, guest speakers with reputations, people that, had significant influence, right? And so the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. This is something that you kind of market before the event, and so it gains momentum over time, right? And because on nights like that, prophecy was expected, you know, prophecy was expected. So people would want to be in this space. You know, if you've never been to this church before and you knew the church had a name and you knew the lineup and who might be coming, you wanted to be in attendance, because in this culture, people are thirsty for a direct word from God in many ways. And that's a whole nother story, rabbit hole, that we can get into, but I'm not going to do that here. And so prophecy in our church carried enormous authority because of the type of pastor that we had, who was well known for this type of engagement, you know, with God and Christ. He had a following that also did the same in his community. You know, his cohort, you know, his counterparts, they would also do the same. And so when a prophet spoke, people believed that they were hearing directly from God, not opinion, not advice, but God, capital G-O-D. And so there was this well-renowned prophetess. I think she's a bishop now. I just kind of looked on social media and see that she's doing other things. Evangelist, prophetess, bishop now, and she was the guest speaker for this event. And the pastor knew that I had a very strong liking toward her, you know, Juanita Bynum level type, you know, impact, right? And so that night, there were many visitors, this visiting prophetess and her flock, a woman that I deeply admired. She was well known, well respected, you know, powerful in the spirit, at least. You know, that's how I understood it at that time. And I trusted her. She didn't know me personally, but she and my pastor, you know, as I understand it or understood it at the time, they have a very long history. And I won't even get into the messiness of that, but they have a history. They know each other really well. So I had, you know, just inherent trust in her through him. And he knew that I admired her and I trusted her, and her relationship to God just felt so compelling to me. You couldn't tell me that, you know, she didn't hear directly from God. And that's important, right? Because trust is everything. Trust is everything. And at that point in my life, I struggled to trust men. Men were not the folks that I needed in my space I just did not trust them. I did not want them close to me. Men in my life have, at this point, historically failed me in many ways and so many things. And so I trusted them. I trusted her. I trusted women, you know, especially in women in leadership at that point. I trusted them. They felt safe. They felt maternal. They felt protective. They felt like people who would protect you spiritually. So the service had been going on for a while, and when it happened, the music was moving. You know how church music, black church music is. You know, the room is charged. You know, for lack of a better word, just spirit. The spirit of God was invoked and conjured, right? The prophetess was flowing through the congregation at this point. She had finished her preaching, and you know, the spirit is high. People were on their feet. She started calling people out. Not everybody, you know, she was very selective, it seemed, and it seemed very intentional about her pickings. Speaking words over them, you know, and suddenly she stopped. She turned and she pointed, and she pointed at me. And I wasn't expecting it, you know, and she said, "Come here." You know, and, you know, the entire congregation kind of just like, in that very spooky church way, got quiet and very prayerful, and they started concentrating, and they turned and eyes were on me. And in churches like ours, when a prophet, you know, calls you out, you don't stay in your seat. You go, you stand up. And so I stood up. I walked over, heart beating, because in that moment you believe God is about to speak to you directly.